See, I knew this was
This
gonna
is
happen.
better. This is better. What
You
did you do
sure?
then?
I didn't do anything.
Okay, this is better.
Okay.
Maybe because you're closer to the computer screen, or
Yeah, because okay, let me just make sure. Yeah, headphones output is headphones.
what about input?
Input as well, yeah. Spatial sound off.
Zoom is recording both audio and video,
Okay.
but I'm only going to take the audio.
Right, okay.
So you could be in your underwear if you wanted to. I'm sure you are in your underwear anyways.
I'm
I
not,
don't.
man. I'm wearing my trackpad.
Because
Nah,
I only see your face and your top, so
yeah.
I wouldn't know if you're in your underwear.
Oh, okay.
And I just came back from the optometrist, and this young guy who's in his first 5 years of practice,
Mm.
the eye exam was 30 minutes, but I spoke to him for another hour.
Oh, okay.
So I sat in his office for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what we were talking about? We were talking about personal finance.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
He
Yeah.
said, "You know what? We only learn about science, and we only learn about the eyes, and I know of nothing else. And I'm 5 years into practice, and I feel like it's boring. I don't know what else to do, right?" And he's only in 5 years of practice. Imagine
Mm.
that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why we had such a great conversation because
Hmm.
he's not the only one. As you've already heard, I'm having lots of fun already with my friend Pratik. So this week we're going to be chatting with my friend who is a NP, nurse practitioner working in the GTA area in palliative care. But we are having a good chat and we're having a good discussion about his financial journey. And I hope you enjoy our discussion, our chat, because there are lots of learning opportunities here, especially for physicians, but also for our colleagues, nurse practitioners. And trust me, you will love what Pratik is going to say because he's a very, very smart person.
How's my financial health, Doc? Welcome to the Financial Literacy Podcast for Healthcare Professionals, where financial security and wealth topics are not a taboo.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to How is My Financial Health Doc podcast. And I am your host, Vuket Tran. We are back this week, or I should say this month. Really, I'm lost because it really depends on how often I record this. And at this rate that I'm going, I'm recording once a month because I'm still busy with other things. Nonetheless, welcome back, everybody. And today I am having a chat, a conversation, a dialogue, sort of joking around with my good friend Pratik. Pratik and I first met when I was actually starting at a nursing home up in Aurora. And that was my maybe my sixth or seventh job at the time. And I started a new nursing home, and I met Pratik. Pratik is a nurse practitioner who has been working there for quite some time, so he knew all the ins and outs of the nursing home and was instrumental in helping me get oriented to the place. And Pratik and I became quite fond of each other because I'll tell you why. Because Pratik is the younger version of myself. So I am 51 today, actually, and I only started learning about life, really learning about life and learning about finances when I was like 47. So maybe 4 years ago, that's when my light bulb went up. but I started learning about finance way before that. But it didn't go up until 4 years ago. And all of a sudden I meet this young guy who like has done everything that I've done. I'm like, oh my God, how old are you? He says, I'm 16. I'm like, Jesus, how can you know all this in 16 and I'm 51 and what the hell? And I started learning from Pratik. And so, Pratik, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Vu. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So now that I've said a lot about you, but also said nothing about you, how about you introduce yourself? Give us the real lowdown of who you are and what do you do.
Absolutely. So, before I even begin, I want to mention that, it's just like Vu said, I've learned a lot from him. And, he's learned a lot from me. We've had this ongoing friendship that's kind of developed. And I'm extremely privileged to actually cross the path. Now, most of you may not know this, but I actually was attending Vu's talk at Primed, and that's when I actually saw him for the first time. He didn't know because I was just some kid in the audience. But the day that I saw him, and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is a role model. This is a mentor that I have, the opportunity to kind of look up to." So now being his close friend, kind of learning things from him, it's just been an absolutely amazing journey to work with him. So briefly, my name is like you said, my name is Pratik, and I'm a nurse practitioner consultant practicing exclusively in the long-term care sector. To give you a brief summary, so I started my nursing career in 2008, and I completed in 2012 my bachelor's degree. In 2010, that's when I actually learned about the NP role and the responsibilities for my preceptor who was actually completing her NP school. And since then, so since 2010, every academic decision I made was centered around achieving the title of an NP. And then after I got into the program, I had to, accumulate some hours to get into the program with my GPA and so on. I worked as a community palliative nurse for about 4 years, and then I completed my Master's of Science in Nursing with the NP certificate full time from 2015 to 2017. Now, after I graduated, I briefly worked in a couple of community health centers, and I quickly learned that it wasn't for me. And, I think we're going to go delve into that in a little bit. Inpatient hospital setting also wasn't for me. And I did do maybe about a year of that, and I couldn't really do that either. The challenge that I was having is that I wasn't able to provide exclusive palliative care to my patients in community health centers or even inpatient hospital because it was more of a RCC setting. So what I wanted to do is to find a place where I can use my advanced medical knowledge, my critical thinking, and strong clinical judgment to alleviate as much suffering as possible. So that's been my goal since I became the NP, became an NP. And that's when I realized that virtually all patients in long-term care are suffering from chronic diseases and life-limiting illnesses. So I thought that, you know what, this is probably the best place for me to practice where I can alleviate suffering on a daily basis. So that's just me in a little bit of a nutshell.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Um, your journey as a nurse and a nurse practitioner is not typical, I would say, right? Because I've worked with a lot of nurses and I've worked with a lot of nurse practitioners in both primary care, emergency medicine, and long-term care. But when we met, there was something different about you that I would like you to share with the audience because your story is inspiring to me as someone who is in healthcare. I'm like, oh my God, how is it that he's been able to do all that at the age of 16? By the way, Pratik is not 16, okay? He can't be a nurse practitioner and be 16. Okay, I'm just joking. But you look at this guy, I mean, we're doing a podcast here. You can't see him, but he literally looks like Doogie Howser with a beard. And but he looks so young. I'm like, Pratik, how is it that you've done so many things with so many other things at this young age? And so what I really wanted to dive into today is what are the different things that you're doing without maybe going into detail, without, trying to do all that, but just to say what are the different things that you do in a week, right? And also what are the things that are in your plan to do that may or may not have to do with nursing, or may not have to do with nurse practitioners, but you're thinking about and you're strategizing. And the reason I want you to do that is I want people to keep their minds open about what they can do. And I keep saying this to my colleagues and to my nursing colleagues all the time. We're not just doctors and nurses, right? We are human beings. We are brothers. We are sisters. We are aunts. We are uncles. We are mothers. We are fathers. We have other interests. We have other passions. And many of us feel like, oh, I'm stuck in nursing or I'm stuck in medicine. Well, not necessarily, because we have many people who do many things. So please share with us, what do you do, and how did you get to do that? Like, what did you do to learn all that?
Absolutely. So, to start off with, what I do on a typical weekly basis. Now, a lot of this, again, I have to kind of give credit to you because I see you as a role model. You have such a wide breadth of, sort of interest and how you practice in such a different variety. So to kind of break it down, so basically what I do on a typical weekly basis is I round at two different nursing homes where again I provide palliative care for my patients. The other thing that I do on the side is I also teach palliative care, and of course I get the privilege to do that with you. So I'm teaching a couple of different courses with you. Another one also is about how to have serious illness conversations with the family members as well. The other thing I also do is I also work at the hospital as a outreach consultant as an NP, and so where again I provide services to the long-term care sector. But outside of this nursing field that we're all, because this is all we learn, right? In school we have 4 years of bachelor's, 2 years of master's. Everything was always around nursing and how to take care of people. But like you said, there's much more to us than simply being a title or to be exclusively into a single profession. So there's more to me than simply being the NP at the back of my name. And so what I try to do is I try to think about other avenues of income. And because this is a financial health podcast, there are other strategies that I try to use to create multiple streams of income. And the way that I sort of do it, again, is to kind of diversify my strategies on how many sources of income I have. So, like I mentioned, I do have multiple streams already, but outside of nursing, there's also stocks, there's also real estate, and there are other avenues out there that I try. And again, because I'm no financial expert by any means whatsoever. It's more of a learning journey for me, and I'm trying to learn because I also have a family. I also have a wife. I have kids. I have a house to take care of. I have aging parents. So there are other responsibilities, like you mentioned. We have other roles to fulfill. And in order to fulfill those at my best, I need to make sure my financial affairs are taken care of. So this is one thing that I try to dedicate some time throughout my week, sometimes even, throughout my weekends, where I try to, block off some time to actually sit down and do some research on different ways of earning income.
You didn't mention very explicitly, but you do a lot of education, and like you teach palliative care with Pallium, as I do. We teach together, but you also teach Canadian serious conversation. You also teach other type of things. So part of your diversity and your diversification, I should say, is that you have started building a small stream of revenue through education. You do it through your clinical work. You do it through education, which is a passion of yours, because I see that, like, you like to educate, you like to teach. So you've developed that passion. But you also are very astute in investment, right? In investing, which is, again, kudos to you for learning that on your own, because I certainly didn't teach you that. I would have said, buy Spotify, right? But no, you didn't do that. You bought something else. Here's my question. At a young age, because you're not like I am. So how or what made you decide, you know what, I need these different revenue streams. I needed to diversify my practice. How did you come to that conclusion? What was the trigger for you, or what was the impetus for you to say, this is what I need to do moving forward professionally?
So again, that's a great question. Now when I reflect back on this, I think the impetus for this is when I actually realized that I am trading my body and my time for dollars, for money. And there's only one of me, and that is the maximum return I can get just because there's only one of me. So there's no scaling upwards on what I can do. So then what I had to figure out is, okay, well, I'm trading my time and my body, for these dollar amounts, but it's a fixed number, right? So trading time for dollars kind of thing. And that's when I realized that they really, I, we have limited time on Earth, and if I'm trading away 10 hours of my day to earn an X amount of dollars, then there's no growth that can happen because I've changed my mindset of how I actually see money. And I wanted to look past simply trading my time for money, and I wanted to earn while I sleep. I had to basically I asked myself a question, okay, how can I earn money while I'm sleeping? And that question led me to the strategies, the research that I've been doing on different kinds of investment, passive income, capital gains, dividend income, and real estate, and all of this other stuff. So that's kind of what led me to strategizing in this kind of fashion.
So you bring up something that I talked about very, very, very early in my podcast. You have to go back 5 years to actually uh, come across this concept, which I should talk about more, is the concept of life energy, right? So there's only one of Pratik, there's only one of Vu. And for Vu to make X amount of money, Vu needs to spend the time and effort and be present, right? Like you say, I have to be in front of a patient, I have to be in front of a family, I have to do the work to actually make the income. But every time I do that, I lose a bit of energy, right? So it's like a battery, you know. You think about the Duracell battery. No, the Energizer bunny. What am I saying? I'm probably gonna get sued by Duracell because I mentioned Energizer. So anyway, so imagine the Energizer bunny, where it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going until it no longer keeps going because you exhausted all the energy, and so you're exchanging your life energy for a paycheck, or you're exchanging your life energy for a bill that has a beaver on it or a caribou on it, right? That's essentially what we do in healthcare because we haven't thought of another way to do it. And you said, well, there must be another way. It doesn't mean I have to stop being a nurse practitioner. It doesn't mean I have to stop nursing. I just need to figure out another way where I don't exchange my life energy for that bill that has a caribou on it, right? So I think that was the impetus. So that journey, that professional journey, that financial journey must have impacted you personally in your own personal life. Can you describe a little bit about that?
So absolutely. So what's changed is I'm actually able to spend more time, more quality time with my family because of the decisions that I've made to look past trading my time for money. So I'm going to add something what you said earlier, Voob. And this is one of those realizations that sort of happens as we go through life. But I always thought that money was the most valuable thing in life. So that's what I used to think. Then I learned that notion, and then I realized that time is the most valuable thing in life. But here's another thing that I just realized, and again, you probably know I'm Buddhist. Now I've realized that it's our attention that is the most valuable thing in life. So you can have 2 hours. Everybody has 24 hours, but if person A is spending, 8 hours just doing something that is, again, I'm not saying everybody has to be productive, but if somebody's doing something unproductive, scrolling social media 8 hours a day versus somebody who is spending 8 hours, learning new things, experiencing new things, and kind of maybe bettering themselves through self-development, self-learning. I feel like that's the point of pretty much life in itself. It's that we're supposed to sort of enjoy our life, but if our attention is focused on social media, I'm just using this as an example, then it loses its value. And so I realized that while we all have the same 24 hours in a day, we all have different attention spans throughout the day. And it's about where you spend that attention, as I feel like that's the most valuable thing. So going back to your question about how is this impacting me personally, because I'm very, very cheap now how I spend my attention. I'm very, very careful about where I spend my attention, my time, my focus, my effort. And so I have consciously made decisions to make sure that I'm spending it where I feel good, basically. I feel like rewarded. I'm spending time with my parents, my kids, my wife, doing things that I enjoy, recreational activities, my interests and stuff like that. Instead of being stuck between four walls and spending 10 hours a day working, where, you might feel like you're stuck in a career or you're stuck in a path where there is no out. And so, I think that financial journey, this realization that I've learned, has helped me kind of look past that, look at the bigger picture.
That is amazing because you know what you said there, and I agree with you. There's only two true assets. I'll agree with you. The first is time, and the second is health. Right? That's why we are in the healthcare industry. Right? You can have time and no health, or you can have good health but no time. But you have both time and health, then you're a billionaire. Right? You're a
Yeah, yeah,
billionaire. So um, and people think that, oh, well, learning about finance is about learning about making money. Like you say, right? Our concept is, well, if I'm making money for the sake of making money, and therefore I'm going to be rich. But you said something that is very important that I want people to understand is you're making money so that you have time. And the time is the important thing, not the money.
yeah,
The money is just a vehicle to the time, right? And so when I say to people, hey, you need to learn about finance, you absolutely need to learn about finance, is not to make money. You need to learn about finance to see how you can produce more time.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours in a day, but some of us seem to have 27. How did that happen? How is it that Vu has 27 hours in a day? Well, Vu doesn't, right? Vu still has 24 hours in a day, but there's something that Vu did that gives him the impression he has 27 hours in a day because Vu has now been able, and Pratik has now been able to focus on things and pay attention to things that are important to Pratik and Vu. So learning about finance is important for that reason. So let me jump to a second or maybe a third lesson you've learned, right? So the first lesson is money is time, time is money, and time is important because it allows you to focus and pay attention. So what would be other financial lessons that you've learned along the way as well? What other things can you share with us?
So again, another great point. I think to recapture everything you said, which is it's financial literacy is not optional. It is something that is mandatory, in my opinion. It's part of being a sustainable and effective nurse practitioner or a healthcare professional. And, you can't really provide the highest quality of care if you're constantly worried about paying your bills, making sure that you have a roof over your head, food on the table, stuff like that. So if you're worried about your personal financial health, then you're not able to provide the highest quality of care, in my opinion. So I've learned, and so that's one thing. The second thing I've learned is, again, this is through my investment journey. And again, I have to give credit to Warren Buffett, who's, of course, everybody sort of knows him. And the eighth wonder, or I'm sorry, maybe it's the ninth wonder of the world, which is compound interest. The power of compound interest. I think this is one of the best financial lesson I've learned. I didn't learn this in high school. I never took accounting or any financial courses in high school. Of course, I didn't take any of financial courses in nursing school. But when I learned about what is compound interest and how it works, um, this is probably one of the most important lessons I've learned is that, and again, I'm going to speak specifically to stocks, which is time in the market is more important than timing the market. So, which seems to be going for me, and I'm sure you're probably following the news with the dips and all of that stuff.
What dips? What dips are you talking about? The tariffs are
Well,
going great. Great, I say, right? It's the
yeah.
best thing ever. What are you talking about? Okay, so these are some financial lessons that you've learned. What do you feel would be other lessons that you should be learning or that you want to be learning? What are some of those things that you say, It's still a gap in my life"? What do you think those things are?
Well, again, reflecting back on everything, I think one thing comes to mind, which is that there's a bit of a lack in healthcare specific financial education. I think, we touched on this briefly, but in nursing or in NP roles, we don't get training in the business, taxes, or any kind of investment information. So, and there's also a cultural gap. I feel like there's a cultural gap, which is we don't talk about money enough in healthcare. It's for some reason a very taboo subject, and everybody should be, keeping their T4s close to their chest. Nobody should be sharing anything, uh, which again, sometimes that can be detrimental if we're not aware of what the financial landscape is like. And the other thing, again, as a nurse, I can assure you, there's this belief that we should be doing this for the love of our job and that should be rewarded. That should be rewarding enough. But to be honest with you, to be quite frank, it doesn't pay the bills, right? So part of caring is like, of course, it's part of it, part of our job, but caring itself alone doesn't pay the bills. So if we could do this for free, how many of us would do it for free? And so I think just more conversations about the financial gaps needs to be more, we need to sort of talk more about that stuff and sort of be open about it.
Well, you definitely nailed it on the head. There is no financial education out there, and not from the official institutions, right? So, have you ever been to a nursing conference or a nurse practitioner conference where they actually cared about your own personal finance, where they teach you? No, I've not seen that. Well, I'm factitious. I don't go to NP conferences, but I do speak at NP conferences, and I've never seen it, and I don't see it in medical conferences either. And when I approach these different institutions, these different physician MD colleges, and say, hey, you should put a financial topic in there. It's like, no, we can't because it's not about patient care. But I'm like, what about the care of your constituents? What about the health of your physicians? Oh, we don't really care about that. We just care about how do these physicians take care of the patients. Other than that, we don't really care about the physician. That's the message I'm getting from them, is because they don't want to teach their own constituents, physicians, how to achieve financial wellness. And like you say, it's mandatory. If people are not financially well, and I'm not talking about being rich, I'm talking about financially well. If they can't do that, they're constantly stressed, they're constantly burnt out. And how good of patient care can you provide if you're constantly stressed and burnt out? So it's a really hard thing to have people understand that. right? And to your point, personal finance is a taboo in our community, in our professions. So, if you had a magic wand and change this today, I would like it to be so. What would that be? How would you go around it? How would you go about it in doing what you want to achieve?
That's a wonderful question. Now, again, my magic wand is broken, so I'm gonna have to just hope for the best. But if I could, so the way that I've broken this down, and I hope it helps you, your listeners here for the podcast, I've broken down what financial health looks like into three different components. So the first one, and again, this is just something that I've kind of put together in my mind, and I try to follow this mindset. The first one is the most important, I think, is financial stability. So you need to have actually first one, I'm sorry, it's a financial security. You need to have the first basic, again, I'm going to refer to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is the food, clothing, shelter, water, stuff like that. So that is what financial security is about. If you have the basic needs taken care of, you're considered, in my opinion, you're considered financially secure. That, okay, you have your basic needs met, everything is good. Okay, you can put food on the table, shelter over your head, stuff like that. So that's the first level. The second level is financial stability, which again, you have your basic needs met, and then you have some leftover cash or some sort of sources of income where you're able to not just purchase your needs, but then you're also able to purchase your wants. Where you want to take a vacation, you want to buy a new car, you want to buy a new phone, whatever luxury or whatever your wants are, you can achieve that in your financial stability portion. And then the third one, which I think this is my hope, this is what I'm aiming for, which is financial freedom. And that basically means that you have your needs met and your wants met, and you have excess cash flow that virtually you can do pretty much anything you want. And in my opinion, if we're comparing this, I'm talking more about the billionaire stats because they have abundance of wealth and they have the amount of money that is sometimes unfathomable to actually put it into perspective. To give you an example, Elon Musk, for example, right? Or Jeff Bezos or somebody like that. They have abundance of wealth and they have more money than they could ever do enough with. Yet they're still putting it to use, of course. But so that's sort of the final stage that I want to achieve is I want to be able to have financial freedom where my needs are met, where my wants are met, and then there is that freedom. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, in our many conversations, is intergenerational wealth, right? So money is a tool, and I'm using as much money as I can while I'm alive, with my wife and kids. But then there's going to come a day where I'm not going to be alive. What is going to happen to that money that I've worked so hard and I put into the CPP and I put into, for whatever? And what about that money? Who is that going towards? So that sort of financial planning, that intergenerational wealth transfer, this is something also what I'm working towards, because I'm looking at not just my financial security and stability, not just my kids' financial security stability, but what about their generations? And so I have I'm looking at a very, very big picture outside of just within my lifetime.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to summarize what you just said there, maybe with a few sentences here. I think it's important for for everyone to understand that they have to be really clear. What is a need and what is a want? And sometimes some of us just have a need and a little bit more. Some of us want a need and a want and a little bit more. But most of us, I would say, if I were to bet my shirt and bet my scrub, I would say most of us want time, right? We want time. And like you say, there's only 24 hours in a day. So how do we get more time? And so having money as a tool to buy more time as opposed to buy more want. So maybe my thought of thinking about it is, okay, first I need to meet the needs. I need to have the shelter, I need to have the food and the clothing for me, myself, my children and my spouse and my family. And then after that, do I need to drive a Mercedes Benz? I would love to, but I don't need to, right? Do I need to drive a Maserati? I would love to, but I don't need to. But would I love to have that extra hour on top of the 24? I would love that if I can, right? So I would love to have 25 hours in a day or 26 hours in a day. So how do I achieve that? And I can only achieve that through financial security, as you say, and then financial stability that allows me to use the money to purchase time as opposed to purchase more things. In the case of Elon Musk and Bezos, all they have is purchase more problems, right? So being a billionaire may not be the answer, but being financially well enough to purchase time is where I would love to be. I've enjoyed our discussion. I think you always surprise me, Pratik. Ever since I've known you, you're very mature for a 16-year-old. Very mature, very, very, very wise. If you have a message to leave us today, what would you say to the audience? Guys, girls, make sure you do XYZ. What would that message be?
So I think the key message that I want to share with my fellow colleagues and the listeners is that in my profession, we always talk about advanced care planning. And the message that I want to share is advanced financial planning is just as important as advanced care planning. Depending on where you are in your career and your trajectory of, your professional career, financial planning should start the moment that you start earning any income, whether you work as a cashier at a restaurant or you are the, emerge doc at one of the top hospitals in the world, whatever the case may be, the financial planning, advanced financial planning should begin at the moment you start earning your first paycheck. The second thing is, again, depending on where you are, what sort of work that you're doing, but if you're working as a consultant, as an independent consultant, like most of the colleagues that I have, you have to work and you have to treat yourself like a business because that's what essentially what it is. You are the product, and your knowledge, your decisions, and your time have value, which of course deserve to be compensated fairly. And if you do feel stuck within your profession, just know that there is an out, and there are other avenues where you don't have to trade your time for money. There's other alternatives out there. You just have to sometimes put in some work to do some research and see what kind of fits for you. And so that's kind of what I want to leave off the listeners with, if that helps.
Thank you very much for sharing that. One particular point that I think is very poignant, um, and it's the point of you must operate your professional corp, if you have one, right, as a true business. And and I say this with the most honesty possible is many of us do not think of it this way. Many of us says, okay, I've got my MPC, I've got my medicine professional corporation, and I operate like any physician and any doctor, any dentist, any nurse practitioner. No, a professional corporation is a business, and you operate your corporation like a business. Because if you don't do that, then you're not operating properly. You're not doing the proper risk mitigation, and you're not optimizing your corporation. And your corporation does what? Your corporation actually doesn't produce any widgets. Your corporation doesn't produce Tesla. It doesn't produce a wrench. It doesn't produce. Your corporation produces services, which is your time, your knowledge, your wisdom. right? So how do you use a corporation in the most effective, optimized way possible? And to do that, you need to run the corporation like a business. And unfortunately, many of us don't do this. So thank you very much for sharing that message, because it's a very, very, very important message. The other thing that you've said, which is also very important, because I see this in my colleague every single day, is that you became a nurse and a nurse practitioner, and I became a doctor and an emerge doc. And that's what I've been. I've been an emerge doc for the last 25 years, and you've been a nurse practitioner for the last 10 years, right? And we get stuck in that rut. I am only a doctor. I am only a nurse practitioner, or I am only a dentist, or I'm only X. And this is what we set ourselves, man. We trap our mind into this prison, and we created this prison for ourselves. I am only XYZ, and I cannot be anything else. And so people are burnt out because they're burnt out from their emerge work. They're burnt out from their family medicine work. They're burnt out from their general surgery work. They're burnt out from their nurse practitioner work, and they feel stuck. They feel they cannot go anywhere because I'm only XYZ and I can't do anything else. And your message is different. Your message is, no, guys and girls out there, you're not just a nurse practitioner. You're not just a doctor. There's so many things else that you can do. The skills, the intelligence, the wisdom, the knowledge that you have acquired throughout your clinical work is transposable to many, many, many other things that you can monetize in this world. And so we need to change mindset and get out of that rut, because if not, we're constantly stuck, and we just keep being stuck in a type of work that continues to burn us out. And so, great message. Thank you for the message, Pratik.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with my good friend Pratik. And there's something that I really want to stress, and that is one of the sentences that he said. Financial planning is just as important as advanced care planning in his field of work. And you know the sentence, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And I think that is such a great message. And for us as healthcare professionals, we often neglect the financial planning of our lives, and we don't do it very well. So I hope that this episode will help you figure it out and say, maybe it is time for me to look at financial planning and planning my financial future. And speaking about financial planning and financial literacy, if you are interested in financial coaching, then give me a ring. You know how to reach me, hmfhd2020@gmail.com, and we can start a coaching session, and we can go through some of the financial concepts that you should be learning and you need to know. And this coaching can go through maybe 6 months or a year and get you up to speed. So if you are interested in some sort of financial literacy and coaching, please let me know. If you have enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, with your colleagues, with your families, and with your pets. I appreciate your help and your support. And again, if you have any comments or feedback, please email me at hmfhd2020@gmail.com.
How is My Financial Health Doc podcast is hosted by Dr. Vukit Tran. Dr. Tran is a physician with a special interest in personal financial security and wealth education. Dr. Tran does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through this financial podcast. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. Please confer with your advisor, lawyer, or accountant for specific advice.